I'm Dan, a 58-year-old man, and I've spent my entire life building something I could be proud of. I grew up with nothing. My dad worked long hours in a factory, and my mom picked up whatever odd jobs she could find. We lived paycheck to paycheck, and there were plenty of times we barely made it. I remember being 10 years old, watching my parents argue over which bills they could afford to pay that month. It left a deep mark on me. When I got older, I promised myself that I would never live like that again. I worked hard, starting with part-time jobs in high school, then moving on to construction after graduation. Eventually, I started my own business in home renovations. It wasn't easy. There were months when I didn't know if the company would survive, but I kept pushing. Now, decades later, I have a comfortable life, a nice home, and enough saved up to retire in a few years. I married Linda when I was 30. Back then, I thought she was perfect, smart, loving, supportive. We had 3 kids together: Mark, a 32-year-old man, Hannah, a 29-year-old woman, and Sarah, a 25-year-old woman. Mark and Hannah are the kind of kids any parent would be proud of. They worked hard, put themselves through school, and built good lives for themselves. Mark works in IT, and Hannah is a teacher. They've both been independent for years. Then there's Sarah, my youngest. Sarah has always been different. She's Linda's favorite, and everyone knows it. From the time she was little, Linda spoiled her rotten. If Sarah wanted something, she got it. If she made a mess, Linda cleaned it up. And if Sarah got in trouble, Linda was right there, making excuses for her. When Sarah was a teenager, she'd throw tantrums if she didn't get her way. Not just regular teen attitude, but full-blown screaming fits with doors slamming. Whenever I stepped in and tried to set boundaries, Linda would push me back, saying, "She's just a kid, Dan. Let her be." It got worse as Sarah got older. By the time she was in her 20s, she still acted like the world owed her something. For example, Sarah didn't want to work while she was in college. I told her I'd cover her tuition, but she needed to get a part-time job for spending money. She promised she would, but every time I asked about it, she had some excuse. Either the job didn't work with her schedule, or the boss was mean, or the work was beneath her. Still, Sarah would show up with new clothes or the latest phone, and I'd ask how she managed to afford it. She'd shrug and say something like, "Mom helped me out." One evening, I brought it up with Linda. "Why are you giving Sarah extra money?" I asked. Linda didn't even hesitate. "She's still figuring things out," she said, brushing off my concerns. I let it go at the time, thinking it wasn't worth a fight, but looking back, I realized that was a mistake. After graduation, things didn't improve. Sarah moved back home and refused to pay rent. She'd say things like, "The job market is so tough right now," while going out every weekend, buying expensive makeup, and spending hours on TikTok. Linda defended her every time. "She's just trying to find her place," she'd say. "We need to support her." The thing is, I love my daughter. I want her to succeed. But there's a difference between helping someone and enabling them, and Linda couldn't see it. I've had countless arguments with her about this over the years. "You're not helping her grow up," I'd say. "You're just making her more dependent on us." But Linda wouldn't hear it. "She's our baby," Linda would argue. "We're supposed to be there for her." One of the worst examples of this dynamic happened when Sarah was just 17. She suddenly decided she wanted a brand new, fully loaded SUV. I told her flat out that if she wanted something that expensive, she needed to get a steady job and start saving up. But before I could even finish my sentence, Linda jumped in, insisting that Sarah needed reliable transportation. She brushed off all my concerns about cost and responsibility like they were trivial. A few days later, I came home to find Sarah on the couch, casually browsing SUV listings online, with Linda right next to her, helping her pick one out. I reminded them both that Sarah didn't have the means to afford a car like that, especially not something brand new. But once again, Linda waved me off, saying something vague like, "We'll figure it out." I wasn't having it. I stood my ground and said that Sarah should wait until she had the financial means and maturity to handle such a big responsibility. Sarah sulked and pouted. Linda stayed annoyed with me for days. In the end, the SUV never happened, but it was just another example of the pattern we'd fallen into over the years. Sarah wanted something, Linda enabled her, and I was always painted as the bad guy for being the practical one. That was the dynamic for years. Every time Sarah wanted something, Linda defended her without question. And every time I tried to enforce some basic boundaries or common sense, I was treated like the villain. Now don't get me wrong, I tried to have a good relationship with Sarah. I really did. I wanted to guide her, help her become a responsible adult. But she didn't want to hear it. In her eyes, I was the man who always said no while her mom always said yes. Still, as much as I saw how spoiled and entitled Sarah had become, I never imagined things would go as far as they did. I thought she was just immature and pampered. I didn't think she was capable of calculated manipulation, and I definitely didn't think Linda would ever betray me like that. It all started to unravel just a few weeks ago. I was in my study one evening, going through some old files when I noticed Linda's laptop sitting open on my desk. That wasn't unusual. She sometimes used my desk when she needed a quiet spot. But something caught my eye. There was a document open on the screen titled, Revised Will. I froze. My heart started pounding as I stared at the screen. I hadn't discussed any changes to our will with Linda. Why was there a revised version open on her laptop? Against my better judgment, I clicked on it. What I saw made my stomach drop. The new will left almost everything, my business, our savings, even the house, to Sarah. Mark and Hannah, who had both worked hard to build their own lives without ever asking for handouts, were practically written out. And then I saw it, my signature at the bottom of the document. Except it wasn't my signature. It was a forgery. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my thoughts racing in every direction. My hands were trembling. This was Linda's laptop, her document, and clearly her idea. She had rewritten my will, forged my signature, and tried to erase Mark and Hannah from our legacy, all to give everything to Sarah. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I printed the document, slipped it into a folder, and waited in the living room for Linda to come home. I didn't know how the conversation was going to go, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this slide. That evening, Linda walked in like it was any other normal day. She casually set her bag down and asked me what I wanted for dinner. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Linda," I said, holding up the printed paper, "do you want to explain this?" She froze mid-step. Her eyes darted to the paper, and I saw her entire demeanor shift in an instant. "Where did you find that?" she asked, her voice suddenly tight and defensive. "Your laptop," I replied, keeping my tone calm but firm. "The better question is, why does this even exist? What were you thinking? Did you honestly believe I wouldn't find out?" She stood there in silence for a moment, like she was trying to decide whether to lie or somehow play it off like it wasn't serious. Finally, she said, "It's not what you think. I was just drafting some ideas. I thought we could discuss it." "Discuss it?" I snapped. "You forged my signature, Linda. You didn't even mention this to me. This isn't some innocent draft. It's betrayal." Her expression hardened, and she crossed her arms defensively. "I wasn't betraying you," she said. "I was trying to do what's best for the family," Linda said. "Sarah deserves more than the others. She needs help." I stared at her, stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. More than the others? I repeated slowly. Mark and Hannah have worked hard to build their lives from the ground up. Sarah, on the other hand, has done nothing but take, and you want to reward that. "She's our youngest," Linda snapped. "She's had a harder time finding her way. The others are fine on their own. And whose fault is that?" I shot back. "Every time I tried to teach her responsibility, you swooped in and rescued her. She's 25 years old, Linda. She still acts like the world owes her something. And now you're trying to hand her everything, at Mark and Hannah's expense. This isn't just favoritism, Linda. This is manipulation." Her face twisted into a mix of anger and frustration. "You've always been too harsh on her," she said, voice rising. "She's your daughter, then. You're supposed to support her." "I have supported her," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I paid for her education, gave her a roof over her head, and covered her expenses for years. But support doesn't mean enabling. And forging my signature to rewrite my will? That's crossing a line. Instead of owning up to it, Linda doubled down. You don't understand. Someone has to look out for her. If you won't, I will. Her words hit me like a slap. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. This was about Linda actively working behind my back, justifying deceit in the name of love. But it wasn't love. It was blind loyalty that came at the cost of everything we'd built together. I stared at her, trying to process the weight of what she'd done. This was the woman I'd trusted with my life, the mother of my children. And now she was standing in front of me, defending the betrayal like it was noble. You know what, Linda? I said quietly. This isn't just about Sarah. This is about trust. And right now, I don't trust you. For a moment, her face flickered, like she finally grasped the gravity of what I'd said. But instead of apologizing or even trying to explain, she turned and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling and replaying the entire conversation in my head. How had it come to this? Had I missed the signs all these years? Or had Linda changed into someone I no longer recognized? Either way, one thing was clear. I couldn't ignore this. I had to take action. The very next morning, I called my lawyer. I told him everything about the will, the forgery, and Linda's defense of it. He didn't mince words. Dan, this is serious, he told me. If she had filed that forged document, it could have caused a legal disaster for your estate. You need to protect your assets, immediately. Following his advice, I took immediate steps. I locked away my original will and every important document in a secure safe. I also froze any financial accounts Linda might have access to, just in case. The more actions I took, the more real it became. My wife, the person I thought I could count on most, had tried to undermine me. But it didn't stop there.